welcome back, guys. Hopefully this is going to be a fairly short video today for you. I'm going to try to keep it around 10 minutes, but I wanted to talk to you today about these adapter plates. Now, these are made by C&H Precision. They're actually really well made plates, but one of the problems I've kind of seen is just with quality control over the last year or so. Whenever this company started out, they were, a little bit smaller, but YouTube channels like Sage Dynamics and a few other big ones out there have kind of shown, these are really good plates, and so they become more popular, which means the company grows, which means they sell more. And whenever that happens and a company grows too fast, too quickly, you get quality control issues. Same thing happened with BCM and a bunch of other companies out there. So that's not necessarily C&H's fault. It kind of is, but it's also, I'm not blaming them for that happening because, that happens to all companies. So that aside, I really, really do like this company and I like their plates. So I just want to kind of get that out there. This is not a criticism necessarily of their plates. It's more of a don't do what I did or be warned that this could happen. So whenever you buy these plates, you kind of know what you're getting into, and I can kind of keep you from making the mistakes that I did. And also kind of give you some tips, to kind of prevent these things from happening or, things to look for. So all that said, I'm going to show you kind of my journey and where I started. So I started out with the MOS plate that I use with this Holosun right here. This is I think it was the 407. It's the one that had the bottom loading tray right here, so you can see that. This is also one from Palmetto State Armory, so it doesn't have the solar panel on top. I wanted something simple. That was only like $175. They still sell these every now and then, but they actually have ones that have the side loading tray. So if you ever find one, go ahead and buy it. They're solid optics, and the battery life is still ridiculously long. So go ahead and get one. Then I upgraded to this plate, which again is made for the RMR cut. So the Holosun fits on there, or an RMR would fit on there as well. And what this does differently than like the MOS plate. The MOS plate requires, and I'm not going to take it out there to show you, but it requires the plate itself to be thicker because the screws that mount the optic to this plate basically thread directly into the plate. So on the MOS plate, this would be threaded right here and right here. And as you can see on these, it is not. The problem with that is, one, if you make the threading deep enough to where you actually get good bite to where the screw actually will hold, then your plate is really tall, which means your optics could be even taller. And then you got the whole height over bore, issue, which, it's not a huge deal, but it is a thing. The lower the optic, like on this one over here, the more natural inline it is with just your standard height iron sights, which everybody's used to, so you don't have to kind of learn to hold your gun slightly lower to, get your sight picture. So that to me was a big deal, especially whenever first learning to use a red dot. So what this company does is they make these little posts right here, which you can see. Hopefully it'll focus. Maybe it will. So these little T-posts fit inside of here, just like this. So they fit inside there, then they stick up. So you can see that gives you a lot of surface area for those threads to screw into. And that just means, obviously, your threading, your screws are going to be more secure because there's more threading. That's one of the problems with the MOS. Again, there's not enough thread there. It only, get 2 turns at the most. Versus with this, you get a lot of thread engagement. So those suckers are not going anywhere. And this is made out of anodized aluminum, for those wondering. They do make steel plates as well, if that's more of your cup of tea. The other cool thing about this is, unlike this Brownell's slide over here, which has those posts that stick up, they're actually milled into the slide, which I do like. It's like the Zev cut, I believe. Which requires thinner screws than, like, say, your MOS plate does. And because of that, your threads, your screws are a little bit thinner, which means they're more likely to break if you over torque them. And if they do break inside of, that slide specifically, they're going to be stuck inside that post, for lack of better words, which means you're going to have to drill that out or you can't mount anything to it. So that's a big risk when it comes to something like that, especially with over torquing. With this, if the screw breaks off inside of here, again, if it'll focus, if that screw breaks off inside of here, like it did on me, all that's ruined is this T-post and that one screw. So you just buy a set of, a replacement set of T-posts and screws, and, you can go back into it. The plate itself is not harmed by you over torquing, and then the slide itself is not harmed by you over torquing, unless you over torque the thicker screws, which actually mount this directly to the plate, which go over here. Now, these are thicker plates, so I highly doubt you'll over torque these. If you do, well, good luck to you. You're gonna have to try to drill them out of your MOS, which is gonna be fun. I don't remember the torque specs for these screws specifically. I would guess it's somewhere, between 12 and 15 foot-pounds based on all the different specs, which I'll go over here in a second. And that's one of the things that's kind of obnoxious with all these different red dot sights and mounting plates and all the different screw diameters, and like they all have different torque specs. So you look at one company, and for this really thin screw, right here, that goes into like the Zev style cut, or it also fits inside these little T-posts. One company will say 10 foot-pounds, and then the other company will say 15. So, for instance, the screws that screw into these little T-posts for the C&H Precision, they recommend 10 foot-pounds of torque to go into that. So, 10 pounds of torque, honestly, whenever you're tightening it down, especially if you're using something like this, which I'm using, which is a torque screwdriver, for lack of better words. This one's made by Wheeler. Definitely use one of these, but you can set it to whatever torque you want. Whenever you set it to 10, it does not feel like it's that tight. Even when using the little Allen key that comes with these things that nobody uses, or everybody uses, and then just Ugga Buggas the snot out of the thing. 10 foot-pounds doesn't really feel like a lot. Now, that said, you are using tiny itty-bitty screws, which are smaller than, these silver ones. So, for what it's worth, go on the side of caution and use less torque than versus more. Especially when using something like this, because those screws, again, are so thin. If you snap one off in there, you're pretty much done with that slide. So whenever I went to mount all of these things, and I've switched these out multiple times on different guns, and I think that's part of the issue as well, I went with Holosun's recommendation of 15 foot-pounds, and I believe that's actually in reference to their thicker screws if you mount it into like the MOS plate. It's not taking in consideration these thinner screws that go into like the Brownell slide or into these posts. So that was on me. Now that said, I switched out plates and red dots 3 times on my guns and 3 times on Rhett's guns before all of this happened. So to the screws and the T-post credit, they survived basically being over torqued by about 30%, 3 times before they had a failure. So, I mean, for what it's worth, that is good. So the first time what happened is this little T-nut right here actually snapped in half. So the tube part up here just broke off from this base. I'll insert a picture here. I could not find them. I saved them somewhere. I have no idea where they went. But I'll insert a picture here so you can see that. And it actually broke off whenever I was unscrewing it to take the optic off, which I thought was a little weird, but thought it was worth mentioning. So you don't repeat my mistake. And again, that's not really on C&H. That's on me not doing research properly and just assuming the torque for all the screws were the same. They're not. So they recommend 10 foot-pounds of torque, which again, I feel like is a little, I don't know, less than it really should be, but I tend to overbuild and over-tighten stuff. That's just my nature. So go with what they recommend and put witness marks on there and use blue thread locker. Now, one thing I will say is whenever I tightened my screws from 10 foot-pounds to 15 foot-pounds, I just did this to kind of see how much the screw actually moved. And again, I used this. I had it set on 10 foot-pounds. I tightened the screw down into where it clicked. It went past to the to where the torque screw stops, or torque screwdriver, I guess I should say. And then I turned it to 15 foot-pounds, and then I tightened again. And the screw, I mean, one of them didn't really move at all. The other one just barely moved. So, and this torque screwdriver is in spec. I did test, or it did come with a little spec sheet saying it was in spec. So for what it's worth, there's not really much of a difference between the 10 to 15 foot-pounds. I mean, I know there technically is, but from somebody who's just going to use an Allen key, I don't think you can get precise enough to even get the torque spec to begin with. So for what it's worth, go with 10 foot-pounds, but I don't think me tightening it to 15 really should have affected the T-post as much as it did. So again, that just kind of reinforces my thought of go ahead and buy replacement screws and T-posts, and every third time you change the optic, just use a new T-post and screws, because you're not going to know the difference between 10 and 15, especially if you don't have a torque screwdriver. So after that snapped off, we ordered another screw replacement kit, which they sell, and they're only $8, and it comes with 3 of all the different things you would need: the T-post, the silver screws, and then the normal screws, and you put which one you need on there. So they do include 3 of everything. So what I would suggest you do is whenever you order a plate from them, just go ahead and buy this. It's $8, and if you end up over torquing something, you have spares. So, and again, they include 3 in there. So even if you broke both of them, you have extras, and you'll still have an extra one. Now, something they do now that they didn't do in the past, and again, this is a plate for the EPS that I just bought. The EPS is on the way. I haven't gotten it yet, but that's what I plan on replacing the Cuda with. If you did watch this review for the Cuda sight, I did find sights that actually work with it. These are the True Glow suppressor height sights. So for what it's worth, if you like those, I ended up filing down the front of this. I don't know if you can see that on there. I ended up filing that down simply because it was really sharp. These were my brother's sights, and I traded out my Trichicons for those because I didn't need the Trichicons anymore, and he liked the Trichicons. So, but if you're looking for sights for that Cuda optic, there you go. But anyways, I end up ordering the EPS carry, and because I want to have a lower, red dot like that over there. And so I ordered this plate, and now if you'll notice, which this did not come with originally, see if it'll focus again. So originally it came with 2 of everything. Now if you look in there, there's a T-post there, and there's a T-post there, or a screw there, and there. There's 3 silvers. Notice there's only 1 black screw in there, and that's kind of another thing I'm mentioning about the quality control. I was missing 2 of the black screws in this one, and that is unopened. Now, granted, I contacted them, and they sent me out that's where this actually came from. They sent me a whole new screw set. So, that's not really a big deal. I got it within like 2 days or something, so that's not a big deal. This one right here is actually one I ordered whenever Rhett ordered some more screws just so I could have them. So I got plenty now, but now that they come, again, with 3, so if you do break one, you already have a spare that comes in the bag, so kudos on them. I don't know if maybe this is just a problem that they have and they're aware of, so they just included an extra one in there, or what the rationale was, but I just thought that was worth mentioning, so I'm glad they include extras. Now, after his broke and we put on new ones, this happened to mine. This happened while I was trying to remove my plate and to replace it with that Cuda one optic over there. So as you can see in there, hopefully, there's part of a screw in there, snapped off on the inside. Now, is this a big deal? If it was that Brownell slide, yes, it would be. And then here's what's left of the screw. But because these little T-posts are, again, they're basically a sacrificial piece, this plate is still fine, and the slide obviously is still fine because we have spares. So that's one of the things I really, really, really like about C&H Precision. And honestly, between like an RMR cut slide or just going with the MOS and getting one of these adapter plates, I would rather go ahead and get one of these adapter plates for the simple reason of these are a sacrificial piece, and you don't have to worry about something breaking off in your slide, except for what the screws themselves are actually holding the plate onto the slide. But these are bigger than ones like that generally are. So the last quality control problem was, again, not this plate here, but it was for I think it was the 509T. It's the fully enclosed optic that Holosun makes. It kind of has like a small Picatinny rail attachment method. It's not quite Picatinny rail, but it's similar. And Rhett had it for his PDP, his Walther, and that plate was fine. And then he decided to switch over to a Glock, and so he got a Glock adapter plate, and that Glock adapter plate, it was a steel one, was too big, so it was out of spec. So no matter what we did, we could not get the Holosun, the red dot, on there. So he sent it back, and they sent a new one, and the new one's just fine, it's in spec. So again, I chalk all that up to quality control, and is that a big deal? No, because they have really good customer service, and they send you stuff out pretty much within a couple days. So I don't really have an issue with that since they make it right, but I just want you to make you aware of all those things. But the main takeaway from this is whenever you're going to use stuff like this, look up the specs for the screws that come with the mounting plate itself. So while Holosun may recommend 15 foot-pounds of torque, just because your optic says that doesn't mean whatever it's screwing into is the same. And because these are obviously a different diameter than what comes with the Holosun to mount into just a standard RMR cut plate like the Glock MOS plate, those are bigger than these are because these posts obviously take up space in there, so the screw can't be as big. So again, for something like this, it's 10 foot-pounds of torque versus something like if you just screw this directly into the RMR plate, it's going to be 15 according to Holosun. So again, if you're concerned about it, start at 10 and then put some witness marks and shoot it a bunch. And if it comes loose, then you can tighten it to 12, 13 or whatever, and then just kind of find your way from there. But never go over 15 foot-pounds is kind of what I've learned. I've seen some torque specs for some different screws that are higher than that, but I haven't seen anything that's higher than 15 for anything Holosun or this kind of plate related. So again, I just want to make you aware of all those issues and potential problems so you don't repeat the same mistakes I did. If you find this useful, please comment down below, like the video, that really helps. If you have any suggestions or ideas, put them down below as well. I try to respond to everyone I can. Sometimes I don't get notifications for whenever you comment. I don't know why that is, but all the notifications I get, I do respond to those. So anyways, I hope you have a good night.